Your donkey might not be ignoring you, even if it looks like they are. That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions I see in donkey training. After working with wild and domestic donkeys over the years, I've noticed a pattern. What we often call ignoring is frequently something very different. Sometimes the donkey is confused. Sometimes they're uncertain. Sometimes they're trying to find an answer to a question they don't fully understand yet. If we mistake confusion for disobedience, it's easy to respond by asking louder instead of asking clearer. But in my experience, that rarely helps the donkey understand. Instead of asking, "Why won't my donkey do what I'm asking?" I have found it more helpful to ask, "What part of my question doesn't make sense to my donkey yet?" That one change has influenced almost every part of how I train. Throughout this video, I'm going to share several examples from different donkeys. Each one illustrates a different piece of the same idea. My hope is, by the end of this video, you'll look at those moments when your donkey appears to be ignoring you a little differently. Because the goal isn't simply getting the right answer. It's asking a question your donkey has a chance of answering. One of the mistakes I think we can make as trainers is assuming that because a donkey did something once, they understand what we were asking. But doing something once and understanding the question are not the same thing. Before I start teaching a new behavior, I like to ask simple questions and pay attention to how the donkey answers. Fuzzy is a good example of this. Here, I wasn't trying to teach him a long list of things. I simply wanted to learn how he responded to something new. Was he willing to investigate? Would he take one closer step? Would he pause and think? Or would he decide he needed a little more time? Every response he gave me told me something about what question I should ask next. I found that the more carefully I watch those early responses, the better I become at choosing the next question. Sometimes we become so focused on getting the right answer that we forget to watch the learning that's happening along the way. A donkey that is thinking, investigating, and trying to figure something out is already giving us valuable information. Those small responses help me decide whether I should make the question a little easier, keep it the same, or if the donkey is ready for the next step. After working with many different donkeys, mules, and horses, I've found that understanding usually doesn't appear all at once. It develops one small success at a time, and that's exactly what we'll look at next. If you've ever thought, "My donkey did it yesterday, why won't they do it today?" you are not alone. I hear the question quite often. One thing I've noticed after working with many different donkeys is that doing something once doesn't mean they understand it yet. Sometimes they simply happen to find the right answer. Dong is a great example of this. Early on, I was asking him to touch the halter with his nose. Occasionally he would do it, but it wasn't because he had completely figured out the question. Sometimes he simply found the answer while he was exploring. If I had assumed he fully understood at that point, I probably would have started asking for more too quickly. Instead, I kept asking the same question and watched for something to change. Eventually, his behavior became different. He wasn't stumbling onto the answer anymore. He was deliberately looking for it. That's the really important distinction. When a donkey begins searching for the answer on purpose, it tells me they're starting to understand the question. Something else changed too. As Dong became more comfortable with the lesson, he also became more curious. Instead of leaving as often, he stayed engaged longer. He started experimenting. He began looking for ways to earn another correct answer. That's one of my favorite moments in training. It's when the learning starts becoming something the donkey participates in instead of something we're trying to make happen. That's also why I don't rush to ask a harder question. Once the donkey begins deliberately finding the answer, I want to give them enough repetition to build confidence and understanding before we move on. That patience often saves me time later on because we're building a solid foundation instead of hoping they understand. One of the biggest changes I've made over the years isn't the cues I use, it's the questions I ask. Earlier in my training, I often thought I needed to make progress a little faster. If the donkey had done something once or twice, I'd naturally start to ask for more. Looking back, I don't think the donkey needed me to ask harder questions. They needed me to ask smaller ones. Sometimes I think about it like a baby learning to walk. We don't expect a baby to stand up and start walking on the first day. Every new skill is built on the one before it. Before they walk, they stand. Before they stand, they learn to sit. Before they sit, they learn to hold themselves up. Every small success prepares them for the next one. I think donkey training works much the same way. Every behavior we want is made up of a lot of smaller questions. If a donkey struggles with the bigger question, I don't immediately assume they're unwilling. I ask myself if I've skipped one of the smaller questions that would help them succeed. One thing I've started asking myself during training is, how can I set this donkey up to find the answer? That question changes everything. Instead of trying to make the donkey figure it out, I'm looking for ways to support the learning process. Sometimes that means changing my position. Sometimes it means changing my timing. Sometimes it means asking for less. And sometimes it simply means giving the donkey a little more time to think. I found that when I break the lesson into pieces, the donkey can successfully answer. They begin to build confidence right alongside understanding. Those small successes aren't slowing the training down. They're the foundation that allows the next step to happen. One of the questions I get asked a lot is, when should I start asking for more? There isn't a stopwatch, and there isn't a certain number of repetitions. Every donkey is different, guys. Instead of counting repetitions, I'm watching the donkey. Nuala and Nuda have been good examples of this. Even though they're close in age and have had many of the same experiences, they don't always learn at exactly the same pace. In fact, they've become part of an ongoing training experiment here at the farm. We're documenting, comparing two different approaches to gentling while paying close attention to how each donkey learns, recovers, and progresses over time. I share the behind-the-scenes updates from that experiment with my YouTube members because it gives us the opportunity to slow down and really discuss what I'm making or why I'm making the decisions that I'm making, not just what you're seeing here on the screen. One thing both donkeys continue to reinforce is that there are times when I know they could do more. But that doesn't always mean I ask for more. I'm looking for something beyond simply completing the task. I'm looking for consistency. I'm looking for understanding. I'm looking to see if they're deliberately choosing the answer instead of accidentally finding it. I'm also paying attention to how they feel while they're working. Are they staying engaged? Are they recovering quickly after something new? Are they beginning to look for the next answer? Those things tell me much more than whether they completed the behavior one time. Sometimes the best training decision I make is to stay with the lesson we're already working on. Not because the donkey can't do more, but because I want the foundation to become stronger before I build on it. It can feel like you're slowing down, but over time, I found that the strong foundation usually creates steadier progress. When a donkey truly understands today's lesson, tomorrow's lesson becomes much easier. One thing I've noticed after working with many different donkeys is that we often think we're asking the same question. But from the donkey's perspective, the picture has changed. Vander was a good example of this. He already knew how to pick up his feet. The lesson itself wasn't new, but the person asking the question was. Chris was learning too. He was learning where to stand, how to position his body, how to support the leg, and how to help Vander stay comfortable while picking up his feet. Chris is quite a bit taller than I am, and those differences matter. They change the angles. They change where your hands naturally end up. They change how the leg is supported. To us, these seem like small differences. But to a newly gentle donkey, they can completely change the picture. Even when a donkey has learned a new task, they're often still building confidence with that task. They may be comfortable doing it with one person, in one environment, or in one particular way. That doesn't necessarily mean they're ready for every variation of the same lesson. With Vander, I already knew the pace that helped him stay relaxed and successful. Chris was learning that pace too. That wasn't a problem. It was simply another part of the learning process for both of them. There were moments when we used a soft rope, not to force Vander, but to keep everyone safe while continuing the conversation. The soft rope allowed us to continue asking the question without putting anyone in an unsafe position. As soon as Vander became more comfortable and engaged, we moved right back and continued working with him directly. Safety and communication can happen at the same time. Sometimes when a donkey struggles with a new handler, it isn't because they've forgotten the lesson. They're still developing confidence in the process itself. The task may be familiar, but the picture is new. That's why I try not to assume a donkey is being stubborn or resistant. Instead, I ask myself, what can I do to help this donkey feel successful with the new version of the same question? Whether we're asking a donkey to pick up a foot, cross an obstacle, load into a trailer, or learn something completely new, we're always trying to reach their mind first. Once their mind understands the question and they begin to feel confident answering it, the body usually follows much more willingly. Throughout this video, we've looked at several different donkeys. Each one was working on a different lesson. Each one had a different personality, and each one was at a different stage of training. But they're all teaching us the same thing. Clarity isn't about the cue making it louder. It isn't about applying more pressure, and it isn't about getting the donkey to perform the behavior one time. After working with wild and domestic donkeys over the years, I've come to think of clarity this way. Clarity is when the donkey understands the question well enough that they can deliberately choose the answer. That's very different than accidentally finding the right answer. It's very different than complying because they feel trapped. And it's very different from simply repeating a behavior they've memorized. When a donkey truly understands the question, you begin to see it in their decisions. They become more deliberate, more consistent. They recover more quickly after something new. Instead of waiting for the answer to happen, they begin looking for it. For me, that's one of the most rewarding parts of training, not because I made the donkey do something, but because I watched them understand something. Once I started looking for understanding instead of just looking for results, it changed the way I train. I began asking smaller questions. I became more patient. I spent more time supporting the learning process instead of trying to speed it up. And over time, I found that understanding creates much stronger foundation than simply getting the behavior. That's what I mean by clarity. And once a donkey truly understands the question, something else often begins to happen. They start searching for the answer. That's where curiosity begins. And that's exactly what we'll be talking about in the next video. If you'd like to go deeper into these ideas, my YouTube members get to follow along with our ongoing donkey training experiment, where I'm documenting Nuala and Nuda's progress and discussing the reasoning behind each training decision. With them, we are using oats to gentle one and no oats to gentle the other. If you'd like more individualized help, I also offer coaching, hands-on clinics, and gentling camps here at Famous Seamus Farm, where we spend time learning not just what to do, but how to observe what your donkey is telling you. If this video helps you see your donkey a little different, I'd love for you to subscribe and join us as we continue exploring the 5 C's framework and helping more people build better relationships with their donkeys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.